Chapter 1. Darkness crept around him as the crimson night air whipped through his clothes. Chaz loved his home world. Everything about it spoke deeply to his soul. He'd been to alternate worlds before, whenever a portal opener happened to show up, but none could boast of that concentrated red tint that made crimson what it was. Chaz took careful steps and felt his face spread wide with a delicious grin. This was it. What he made off this house could tide his family over for at least 3 months, plus pay off that snake Taser they owed money to. Fuck his brother for getting them into that mess with Taser in the first place. Now when shit was going down, where was Kirk? Nowhere to be found, that's where. Chaz grunted, a dry, humourless sound even to his own ears. Red gravel crunched under his feet as he walked, the humongous burgundy house looming in the distance. He and Kirk had been casing the place for months, and then, here at the last minute, his dumbass brother decided to pull out. Ah well, Chaz shrugged. Such was life, he guessed. Hunching down on the side of some big red bushes, Chaz closed his eyes and let his senses take him inside. He went from room to room, trying to suss out any power signal he could find. Satisfied that the place was indeed empty, he straightened up and focused on the house across the street. He'd already scoped out the guy named Marudi who lived there. Dude had the power of telekinesis. Chaz just needed to borrow a bit to get inside the locked doors of the house he aimed to hit. Had Kirk been here, he could have used his thunder power to crack the door open. Chaz spat on the ground, a bitter taste in his mouth. 1,000-year curse on Kirk, the bald-headed son of a bitch, for not coming to help. Chaz closed his eyes and held out his hand, reaching for the power inside of Yerudi and bringing it to himself. It came rapidly, working its way through his central nervous system and settling inside of him. Chaz smiled and decided to test it out. He waved a hand at the door and it flew open, inviting him inside. Pleased that so far things were going according to plan, he crept into the house, mindful of his surroundings. He didn't have to think about it once he'd made it through the front door. He and his brother had been over this plan from top to bottom. Get in, get to the safe, get the red coins, don't touch anything else, and get the hell out of there. Unfolding the large burgundy money bag, he quickly walked toward his target. Nerves made his hands slick and his heart thump. He'd done this 1,000,000 times before, yet each time was different. The danger, the excitement, the thrill. A shiver ran through him as he thought about it because honestly he couldn't get enough. Rounding the corner with a confidence he usually only wore after he knew he'd won, he stopped dead in his tracks as the air in his lungs constricted, threatening to choke him. What the fuck? Standing in front of the safe, actively shucking coins into a very large maroon bag, was a tall, brown-skinned man, twisted red and orange dreadlocks hanging down to his ass. His eyes turned to Chaz, and the other man felt something inside of him go sideways as his world shifted off its axis. Beautiful was the first word that came to mind. The man before him was tall, regal even, and he held a confidence that said he could sell you water during a flood and make you think he'd done you a favour. Unfortunately, he was in the process of taking every damn thing Chaz and his brother had worked so hard for, so the effect didn't last long. "You have no power," Chaz stuttered to the man, then cursed himself for sounding so foolish. Get a grip. He needed those coins that the other man was so happily taking for himself. The other man cocked an eyebrow at him, stopping for a minute to turn around.
"Are you Chaz Dean, the power-sensing thief?"
He didn't look impressed.
"Heard about you. Oh, and of course I have power. Everyone has power."
He shrugged, then went back to packing his bag. Chaz felt his nostrils flare. "How come I didn't sense you in here then?" He stopped talking and took a calming breath. Getting upset wouldn't help anyone, and it certainly wouldn't get him the coins the other man was in the process of taking. "How come I can't sense you now?" The other man treated him to a full-blown smile, and Chaz started before regaining his composure. This man was breathtaking, and Chaz wanted him in every sense of the word. But not now. Now was not the time. He needed that money, so he shook himself and tried to focus on the reason he was here. The man looked him over, his voice going low, his eyes hooded.
"I can come closer. Think you might be able to sense me then."
His tone was mocking, and Chaz knew he should just snatch the man's bag and run. Yet somehow he stayed rooted to the spot, mesmerized by what stood before him.
"Name's Clink,"
the other man said, causing Chaz to come out of his funk.
"And I don't mind sharing."
A pause as his eyes travelled the length of Chaz's body.
I don't mind sharing some things, that is.
Chaz's breath hitched. Was Dude flirting with him in the middle of a robbery? Chaz shook his head because he needed to focus. No, I don't want to shh. Chaz stopped mid-sentence as he sensed a whole lot of power coming their way. Shit, man, it's the blockers. Chaz looked around, trying to find an exit route, as the place seemed to be surrounded. Clink had a small smile on his face as he gave the safe a wide sweep with his arm, spilling what coins he could into his bag. Chaz couldn't believe it. You think this is funny? Maybe you don't mind being in the blocker, but I sure as shit ain't trying to go back.
Hold this.
Clink thrust the bag of coins into his hands and went completely still, closing his eyes. Chaz looked from the bag to Clink, still not able to process what was happening, but suddenly he felt the blockers turn and leave. Chaz let out a surprised breath of air. They were heading in the opposite direction. Clink blinked and opened his eyes a couple of seconds later. He grabbed Chaz by the wrist and spoke in an urgent whisper.
It's working. Now let's get out of here before they come back.